Welcome to Unicorns, a podcast series featuring people who have distinctive characteristics and/or experiences that make them truly unique, or a unicorn. We are your hosts, my good friend Alberto Lara.
Hello, and this is my friend Phil Robinet.
And we are what I consider to be unicorns. Why is that, you ask? Because we are both electrical engineers and we both perform stand-up comedy. In my opinion, those are two traits that are so diametrically opposed that they instill disbelief in people. In the upcoming episodes, we will feature guests and their stories, demonstrating how the world is filled with more unicorns than one might think. So sit back, keep your arms and legs inside, remain seated until we come to a complete full stop, and enjoy the ride.
Unicorns is not suitable for children of any age. Unicorns is intended for mature audiences and entertainment purposes only. Welcome to part 2 of 2, The Last Swashbuckler, Bill Robinet.
I wasn't a very good student. I wasn't even a very good student in college. However, offsetting penalties, we'll say, I graduated with a C+ average out of engineering. But don't forget, I took my finals 2 weeks before the end of the semester, and I started 2 weeks late. So you've got to give me a little bit of credit for that. But my friends, I kind of leaned on them a little bit. We did homework together and all that stuff. So it was a little easier when you study together. And, you know, you electrical engineering is a lot easier than mechanical engineering. But I'll tell you how fortunate I was. The cards seemed to fall in my favor. When I was going through college, I took 6 subjects in fluid dynamics and heat transfer. Don't ask me why now, but that's the way it worked out. When I interviewed for jobs, I got 5 job offers. Chrysler in Detroit, Arizona Public Service, Motorola, Tenco, Ling Tenco Watt was one. When I interviewed them, there was a picture of a fucking drafting room with 1,000 drafting tables. And I said, do I have to start out on one of those? Because I hated drafting. They said, yeah, I said, forget it. I was going toward the end, closer to graduation, and I didn't have a job. I didn't accept anybody. And a friend of mine told me to go an interview with Paso Natural Gas Company. And this is before your time. It was a subsidiary of the gas company, and we built petrochemical plants and refineries. So I sent my resume in, and they asked me for an interview to come down and talk to them. So I talked to the chief engineer, and it was a very freshly founded company. He was very, very aggressive. They took 6 giants from the gas company to form this company. So they were all mentally giant people. And he interviewed me, and he's talking to me about, well, we give you a problem, and if you start drowning, we'll pull you out and dry you off and throw you in the second time, but the third time we'll let you drown. Scared the shit out of me. I signed up with him. I don't know why. Well, probably because it was the last vestige. Anyway, I went to work for him. And right out of the bat, petrochemicals and refinery, especially refinery, is fluid dynamics and heat transfer. Right down my fucking alley. They gave me a problem. It's like a textbook problem. It was no goddamn, a study, because the Sneezer refinery was brand new and they had trouble with their goddamn heat transfer. And so they said, well, can you do this? I went up there, and about 3 weeks later, I wrote a report and we all fixed it. I went to the hotel after I delivered my report. They had one of the hierarchies go up there. He had a bottle of scotch, and he says, we're lucky to have you. You must have a lot of refinery experience. I said, this is the first refinery I've ever stepped into. He said, let's go have some Chinese food. I like lumber 3. We became friends. From then on, I advanced in that company rapidly. They put me in charge of a benzene plant, design and construction of a benzene plant, moved me to Kansas City to oversee the engineering, nuts and bolts engineering. And that lasted a year. Then I came back, and they gave me a problem on another topping unit. And so I got me a goddamn column and some flexi trays, from Koch Engineering Company, and got that thing running, got some raises. And so I got called into the chief engineer's office. I figured, oh, fuck, I'm in trouble, because I was out of work. All my projects were gone. And they called me in there, and they said, we lost our plant engineer at the Sneezer refinery, and we're wondering if you want the job. I tried to act nonchalant. But shit, I goddamn near kissed him, And it involved a raise, a company car, a company house, and a department. I was my own fucking boss. The plant manager liked me. My father and mother came up for Christmas. He got my dad aside. He says, that's the best plant engineer I've had.
How old were you at this time?
It was the Kennedy administration. We got killed in 1960.
So 60. So you were 30, early 30s.
Yeah.
Early 30s.
We'd have a meeting. To me, it was a fun job. There was nothing to it. I had a staff. And so every morning I'd drive my car in there and my process engineer and I will go around to the control rooms, and see punch lists, see what their problems were. Every Monday morning we'd have a meeting in his office. And there were 6 key personnel, me being one of them, 6 houses: maintenance, process engineering, assistant superintendent, the instrument guy. He'd have these goddamn pet projects he wanted done. And they'd all bitch at him, we're overworked, we can't have time for this. And they'd argue with him. He'd get around to me and I'd say, yeah, Dell, when do you want it? Knowing I couldn't do it. And I said, is Wednesday good enough? Oh, yeah. He thought this was a great thing. Everybody was fighting him except me. And so come around Wednesday, I said, call him on the phone, Dell, can I have an extension? Sure. Yeah, I kissed his ass, and he told my dad I was the best plant engineer he had. And I was retired out of that place, except that Shell bought the fucking place, bought the refinery, and kept me on and stripped me of my car, my goddamn department, and wanted to move me to New York City in their head office for some shell shocking. And they paid my way up to New York to investigate. And I went into the office and I talked to one of my so-called peers. I said, where do you live? He said, we live in New Jersey. He says, there's 5 of us. We own a car and we drive it to the outskirts of New York City and catch a subway. Well, I take on whatever they gave me. Yeah. I mean, not that people turned it down. It's just that, you want to do this like that topping plant. They said, we got some condensables that are going out to the flare, the last stage at a refinery. They're going out to be flared and we can recover them if you build a column. But I had a lot of talent around me. I had process engineers in a company and all that stuff. And I put together this fucking small plant. Got time to fire the fucker up. It was my pet project. I was out there during the construction and everything. I was having a ball. Got this thing built and I tried to start it up. It was after hours. I was having trouble balancing it. I was frustrated. I was tired. Pretty soon there's a big grass fire around the goddamn flare where all the stuff belched out, and the operators were telling me, go home. We don't want you around here. And bullshit, I'm starting this plant up if it takes me till tomorrow morning. And so they went in and got on the phone and called my boss, who happened to be in town. There's a plant in Midland, Texas, or Odessa. And so they called him. He drove out. It was 11 o'clock at night. Get in the car. So I sat in the car with him. He lectured the shit out of me. He said, look, those guys will get there and they'll start kicking that pump with their feet and it'll work. And we had a long conversation. That was just before I got promoted to the plant engineering at the Sneezer refinery. We're going back to the hotel and you're going to bed and you'll get up the next morning and this fucker will be running. And sure enough, it was. I couldn't get it running. I got a design, but I couldn't get it running because I was out of balance. You got to balance those fuckers,
So you were kicking ass at the El Paso Natural Gas Company. How old were you relative to your peers? Were you the same age or younger?
No, younger.
Yeah. So you were a phenom.
A what?
A phenom.
Okay.
A young star.
Well, I was.
Yeah.
I'm sitting in a bar.
Let the record show I just stumped my dad with a vocabulary word.
Just shut up. I was sitting in a bar. No, I was sitting in a bar, and I have no ambition. I'm doing what I'm doing and enjoying it. And when I go deer hunting, they'd let me take a company car and take time off to go deer hunting. Yeah, I mean, I had all these fringe benefits, and my expense account was, they never questioned it, and so. I'm sitting before I become plant engineer. I'm sitting in a bar in El Rancho, and we're doing some maintenance on the plant shutdown. Okay, annual maintenance. And I had a guy named Glenn Ecord. He was upstairs, one of the directors, and we're sitting there bullshitting. And he says, "You know what? He didn't even know me. That's the first time I met him." He says, "You're a real comer in this company, aren't you?" Really? I didn't know that. No shit. I am telling you the truth. And because I just accepted it, and I designed an asphalt plant, propane de-asphalting plant. We had an asphalt contract. This was before I got to be plant engineer, just right before. And so they said, this is your project. We got to, this pitch from the cat cracker, we got to wash it with propane to get asphalt. It's a rotating disc contactor that's about 60 feet tall, and it's got these discs, propane on top, pitch on the bottom, and you get, okay, 9 fucking stage pump, a 9-stage propane pump. The night altitude at that refinery is 7,000 feet. So you got a lot of suction problems. They said, well, Sun Oil Company is a partner of ours, Sunoco. They had a deal in Florida together. You go back and visit their plant. So I took one of the guys with me, and we went down, and we went, it was Tulsa, and we went through their plant. The guy, very nice, you know, took us around, spent the time with us, and pulled out the drawer and showed us some drawings and all that. I said, will you print that drawing for me? He says, I'll print the whole fucking plant for you. So we walk out with a bundle. All I had to do was scale it down. It was more of the capacity, scale it down. And then there was a deadline for contracts we had. And that rotating disc contactor was 6 months delivery. And Wyatt Industries in Houston had one that was going to be delivered to one of their customers. I was talking to the salesman. I said, this was like a Friday afternoon. I said, I want that. The guy's name was Ep5. I remember this distinctly. He was out of Dallas. The factory was out of Houston. He says, I can get that rotating disc contractor, but you got to bring a check with you. So I walked into the vice president's office. I'd never met him before, John Benson's uncle. He was a vice president. Everybody else was all fucking off, you know, it was Friday. I went out there, and now, believe it or not, now this is in the 60s, early 60s. This rotating disc contractor they had ready for delivery was $66,000. So that'd be a couple $100,000 now. So I went to his office and said, I need a draft for $66,000. I want to buy a rotating disc contractor. He got nervous as shit. He had a pen in his hand. And I said, we got to have it. And I started telling him why. He was too fucking afraid to say no. He wrote the goddamn draft out. I caught an airplane, and I told Ep5, I want you down in Houston with me in case you're lying to me. And so we met the next morning. I bought that fucking rotating disc contactor. But we were starting the plant up. I'm living in a company house. So I moved up to Sonita Refinery, and I'm still, this thing was being constructed. And so I'm supervising that in addition to other things.
And this is Gallup, New Mexico.
Gallup, New Mexico, 7,000 feet high, 9-stage Ingersoll ram pump, the heart of the machine. And so is at night, and the chief of maintenance and his millions started to fire that thing up. It cavitated and trashed the pump because of cavitation, lack of suction pressure. Well, you know what cavitation is, being an electrical engineer and all that shit. The next morning, I called an emergency meeting. It's news to me. Going to Dell's office, and we're sitting there, and he's chewing their ass out. Don't you ever start a piece of equipment without Bill Robinet being there. Well, if I'd have been there, it would have still trashed it. They called up and they said, you know, there's 6 months delivery. We can't get another pump. Dell says, can you see what you can do about it? I said, I'll get you a pump. I called the vice president, Ingersoll ran in LA. I told him what the story was, and I said, my job is at stake. If we can't get that pump in 2 weeks, I'm history. And I pleaded with him, and I told him, if you get me that pump in 2 weeks, your people will not have to check in at the main gate. I'll get them a pass, and they got free access to the plant. You know, the reps. He said, can you get that pump down here right now? We'll put people overnight on it to overhaul it. And sure enough, I loaded in a fucking pickup, and I had a guy drive it to LA. And 2 weeks later, this time I was there when they started it. But we knew what was wrong, so we made sure we had suction pressure. I was no help at all. I lucked out. That's a true story. I solved my problems, not on the job, all 24 hours. I'd lay awake at night, mulling it around. I lived those problems. I don't know why. It's not a special gift, but it was something I felt that I had to do. I couldn't let go. And I would dwell on it until it was solved. And I developed this thing. Obviously, if you can define a problem, you can solve it. The biggest problem in problem solving is they can't define the problem. When I got out of school, I worked for El Paso Natural Gas Company, and then I worked for different places and became plant engineer of the Sunnis refinery and ended up in Phoenix. And so I went to work for a consulting engineering firm and learned how to do consulting. I hung my own shingle in 1972 with one guy. He was my designer, and that company grew, thanks to Philip here, to offices in El Paso and Phoenix.
20 employees.
Yes, high overhead, and so I would commute back and forth every week between the two cities, and retired in '95 when I moved up here in Oregon. When I was engineering, I did flight instruction. I bought and sold airplanes. My wife and I had 17 students. She was an air traffic controller, and I got her CFI, her license. We have 17 students and 7 airplanes. Jesus Christ, it's a wonder I didn't lose weight.
And he was a newlywed.
Yeah. The other day when I was writing one of these books, I listed the number of people that got killed while I was in that 6 years. It had to be almost a dozen. And some of them were friends, like Jimmy Sternard. And this was like in the 50s, okay? And I respected the shit out of him. I really looked up to him. And one day I walked in the airport and they said, Jimmy Sternard got killed out of a turn. And I got thinking, geez, that was my last year. And I said, Jesus Christ, where do I stand in this thing? How come I'm still around? I mean, if this guy gets killed, how come I'm being spared? Homer Faulkner gets killed. He's an alcoholic. When I was starting out, he counseled me on how to survive a crash and all this shit. He was kind of flaky because he was drinking a lot. I met him in a bar in Buckeye. He was drinking Coke. And he says, I quit drinking. I'm serious. He reformed. A week later, the fucker was dead. And I got to think, Jesus Christ, Homer Faulkner gets killed? Where the hell is it? You know, I was flying with John Kellogg my last year. In 10 days, in 10 fucking days, we had 2 airplanes apiece, a spray rig and a duster. 4 fucking airplanes between the two of us, working out of Buckeye, Arizona. He wrecked 3 of them in that 10 days, leaving me with the only one left. But he survived them all. That dumb son of a bitch. Anyway, I was a wreck when I quit. At the end of the deal, you know, I was nervous. I was wrecked. I was a wreck. But these guys were just. There's a picture of me and Steve James and Gail Bishop, the chief pilot, getting our airplanes ready to go into Canada. And they brought the press out there, you know, because we were cleaning them up for the inspection. And the 3 of us were standing there, and the guy took our picture. It's in the book. The 3 of us, Bishop and Steve James, got killed the following year. The following summer, you know, not the following year, after the Budworm project, and then went back dusting cotton, they both got killed. And I got thinking, what the fuck? I mean, these guys were supposed to be good. But, you know, they talked about Steve James. He pulled out of a field, and he looked back to see how good it was, and there'd be a fucking tree in front of him.
We've sat here and listened. It's dangerous. It's hard work.
Hard work.
High mortality rates. Extreme skill is required to do this. He survives it. 6 years, works his way through college, becomes an engineer. Now, fast forward to the mid-'70s. Billy's got his own engineering firm. He's got an electrical engineering partner, Chuck Avery. I'm working at the firm. And Billy says, you know what? I'm going to start crop dusting again.
Oh, shit.
That was fun. He's in his 40s. Let me finish, and you can jump in, okay? And he says, I'm going to do this crop dusting thing again. It's fun, and, you know, I need to get back in shape, and I need to prove I can still do it, and blah, 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 blah. So he's getting up at 4 a.m, loading planes with 50-pound sacks of dust, then going to the office, working all day, and then doing it over.
Yeah, but that was short-lived.
Yeah, and then I think, how long did that last?
Well, okay.
Yeah.
Bill Taylor, my wingman, in that incident, in the Forest Landing. He had his own operation in Levine, Arizona. And I used to fly down there in the 150 Cessna just to bullshit with him. And I told him I wanted to get back in it. He says, well, I'm going to seed some rice and fertilizer Saturday. And come on out and I'll let you try it. So Willie and I fly the 150 Cessna over there. Willie's just over 12 years old.
My brother.
Yeah. So anyway, so we go down there and his girlfriend is flagging.
Taylor's girlfriend.
When you seed, you fly 30 feet off the ground, so it's safe enough over the wires because it's got to spread out. They loaded up this Pawnee, 235 Pawnee. I get in, put his hard hat on, haul ass. I mean, first time in 17 years, make several passes. You know, his girl's flagging me and coming back, and he's drinking. They're drinking 16-ounce Schlitz with the farmers. They're all gathered around, and my little 150 Cessna sitting over the side. And so I land, and I said, I got one more load to go. I said, 2 more loads. I said, how are we doing on fuel? Because we'd run a long time, and I wasn't familiar with the airplane, never flown it before. And he goes up there and gets the gas gauge. It was all smudged up, and you got plenty of fuel. He says, you take this load, and I'll take the last one to make sure we cover it. I said, okay. So we loaded up, and I haul ass, and I did that last load. I came back, landed, turned around. They loaded the airplane up, and I poured myself a fucking brew, and Bill Taylor takes off. And I drink the beer, maybe another one, and he's not showing up. So where the fuck's, it didn't take that long. So pretty soon here he comes with a pickup truck with his girlfriend driving up to the strip. The first pass he made, he ran out of fuel.
That could have been you.
Yeah, oh yeah, no shit. But he was good because he was recent, okay, he was current. So he managed to save the airplane plus a little skin damage, So we pushed the airplane back up on the goddamn road and put 5 gallons of fuel in there and launch him, to take it home, go back to the strip, and we're bragging about Willie being able to fly the airplane by himself. He's just a little kid. And they said, oh, take my foreman for a ride with you. And the foreman said, yeah, let's go. So Willie and the foreman take off on the Cessna, pal around a little bit. And we all adjourned to the bar in Levine. The story spread around the goddamn bar. And the kid was a hero, shooting fool with these guys. You fly airplanes? Yeah, no shit.
I don't think there's many people in this world who would take up crop dusting on a whim, not on a necessity. 17 years later, in their mid-40s, he has a cushy job. He owns an engineering firm. He's high stature in his field and in the city of Phoenix. And he's like, I'm going to start crop dusting again. What the fuck?
You never forget. It's like riding a bicycle. Until I sold my N3N, which is on the cover, it was the same crop duster I flew in my had that midair. And I would take people off for a ride, and I'd go out and mop up a field, show them how it was back in the days. Same deal. It never changed. I could pull up over the wires and do my turnarounds and get back in. And I mean, I thought that people that do it today have it made, because they don't have to slow the airplane up on the cotton. They don't slow it up. They go cruise power, tail high. They're scooting up like us. Do a turnaround. They're safe. Big airplane, big cockpit, all kind of shoulder harnesses and hard hats and cushions,
instrumentation.
Yeah.
So you now, or recently, up until recently, in the N3N, which is the plane you owned that was similar to your crop duster plane, you would simulate crop dusting with friends and passengers
right here
in Oregon.
Yeah.
My dad mentioned Bill Taylor some other time. Bill Taylor and his brother Phil Taylor, which I just found out 30 minutes before this podcast, that's who me and my brother were named after.
Hey, see, that's another story. They worked for an outfit in Maricopa, Arizona, 30 miles south of Phoenix. Yeah, they had 3 airplanes and me. Okay. So they called me and said, we got this big job. Can you come down and help us with it? I said, sure. So I go out in the dark and I'm making an approach on their fucking strip. And I look down there and I see these wheels sticking up out of the cotton upside down. So I land, and one of the brothers had taken off and the engine quit and he turned it over on its back. So that left him 2 airplanes. So the 3 of us go out to do this job, and there's a Parker Highline, a big 210,000 volt transmission lines, paralleling the strip and converging. So when you took off, you had to do a left turn out. You couldn't turn right. So we're blowing and going, you know, and the fuel pump is at the strip. So without power, I couldn't fuel my airplane again. One of them stacked the airplane. Bill or Phil stacked it on landing. So it left the 2 of us. So we're blowing and going, and Bill Taylor, yeah, it was Phil that stacked it. So Bill takes off, instead of doing a left turn, turns right into the fucking Parker Highline. Let him down, didn't kill him, but it took the power out. I said, I got this fucking job by myself, but I'm running low on fuel. So I go back to fuel, and sure enough, there was no power to fuel. It was a dispenser. They stacked, in one morning, they stacked 3 fucking airplanes, the 2 of them.
He was so impressed, he named me and my brother after them. Do you have a closing? Do you want to wrap up with a message?
You know,
summation?
I really don't. I'm trying to, what I'm trying to do, I don't charge people for my time anymore. You know, I got 5 or 6 guys here I taught to fly, and I didn't charge them for it and all that stuff. I have trouble resolving all this, except Lane Community College have a flying school, and they invited me over there to do a lecture to their graduating class. I sat there and I tried to get an outline, and I sketch it out of sideways and all that stuff, and I brought my little cue card. I said, how the hell am I going to talk for an hour? So I started talking not about me, but about flying, ambition, opportunity, and motive. I started developing this, and I got cynical. I told the class, 1972 or thereabouts, the FAA said that every pilot had to have a biennial flight review, check ride, and however, flight instructors didn't have to have them. So I said, well, shit, I hate to fly with anybody because I don't fly like they do. You know, I get criticized. I'm a stick and rudder guy. I'm not by the numbers. I told them I got my CFI license. Then they lied to me. They said even CFIs have to have biennial flight reviews. So I got married, and I got my wife an instructor's rating, and now we give each other our biennial flight reviews on the bar at home. Then I got warmed up a little bit, and I told them, now, if you're going to go flying and you want to do a buzz job, don't go around for seconds, because they'll get your number. Buzz them and get the hell out of there, and they don't know who it is. And I had several deals like that, and their teacher was in the background listening to this shit, and I got thinking, shit, I'll never get invited back to here, you know. And when it was all over, good lecture. Can you do it next year? I did it one more year, and they wanted me to come back. I said, fuck you. But a lot of people, you'll be surprised how many people will not listen to your sage advice. It's survival advice. My philosophy in teaching a guy how to fly, I tell him right at the beginning, I'm not going to teach you how to fly by the rules. I'm going to teach you how to save your life, how to live. That doesn't seem to connect with the bureaucracy. When I did that medical flight test, I guess I told you about that examiner that checked it. Yeah. That fucker told me fly 5 feet off the ground. I did. Shit, I've been doing it. What the fuck? And you know what? Most of the people that I taught to fly, they hang around here. There's a bunch of people who hang around this hangar. They can't make a decision. They can't make a fucking decision. I'll try to help them, steer them in the right direction, but they can't make a decision. The guy come in, one of my students come in here, and he was eating, he and another one were eating in a restaurant up in Salem. And on the bulletin board, there was this airplane for sale. The guy was sick. He was German. He was a good craftsman. He had this thing 90% complete, rebuilt, okay, restored. And he put it up for sale, a brand new ad. He brings it back, and he started kicking it around. And after an hour, he's fucking with it, you know. And I said, why don't you call the guy? Why don't you talk to him? Because he's asking me questions. I said, talk to the guy. He wouldn't do it. I pick up the phone, talk to him. They ended up buying the airplane, restoring it, selling it for more than it was worth. If I hadn't picked up the phone, and that's happened a couple of times. If I hadn't picked up the phone and called the guy, they wouldn't have got it. You can't make a decision.
I just figured out the lesson of the day. The wise words of wisdom from Billy. If you're gonna buzz the crowd, do it once and get the fuck out. If you go around a second time, they're gonna pick up the numbers on your tail and report you.
Oh yeah.
So if you buzz the crowd, do it once and get the fuck out. That could be a metaphor for life. Unicorns is brought to you by Opulent Works, created by Phil Robinet, executive producer Alberto Lara.